Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to be doing two things. It's going to be a short video. All we're going to do is we're going to add the exit button to our user interface so that the user can close down the application, and we're going to place a game object in our 3D space so that when we scan our image target, we're going to actually be able to display something. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add that exit button to the UI. So to get a good view of our UI, we're going to come up here to our little 2D box, click it, and we're going to change our perspective. Next, to get a focus on our UI, we're going to click on it in the hierarchy and bring our mouse cursor into the scene window and press the F key. Now we can see our entire UI. Because we want to add a button to the UI, what I'm going to do is come back into the hierarchy and I'm going to expand our little UI game object. I'm going to right click on our UI game object and I'm going to come down here to the UI section and I'm going to create a button. This button is how we're going to exit out of the game, which means it's going to be able to be present throughout the entirety of the user experience. So I'm actually going to bring this up to be just underneath the help button up here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to expand the button, go to the text component, and I'm going to change the text component of the text object to exit. You know, that might not be specific enough. Let's go exit program. There we go, a little bit better. Now, I'm going to come up to the button, and I'm going to rename it to exit button, and click enter. So now I have my exit button, but it's sitting behind this image here, so I can't see it. So one of the ways that I can actually change the position or the scaling of something in any of the transforms, whether it's a rect transform or a 3D transform, is I can also come up to the little description of that particular dimension of the transform. I can left click on it, and then I can drag right or left. And so if I want to bring it up all the way to the top, I keep dragging to the right, and as you can see, I can position it right up near the top. Now, I don't actually know how tall my UI is here, so to finalize it, I'm going to left click on it and make sure that it snaps up to the top bar there. So 225 is my Y position. That button's pretty big. I don't think I want the button to be that big. Someone might click it accidentally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that same method. I'm going to left click on the word width over here, and I'm going to drag it to the left to make it smaller. There we go. So now we have our little exit program button up here. And because it is something that, might draw attention for the user, I'm also going to change its color. So instead of being white, maybe burnt yellow. Why not? So now we have our exit program button up here. So if we were going to look at this UI as though we were the end user, what we would see normally would be this. I just noticed I have two exit buttons. Unity allows me to have many things with the same name, so I guess for the sake of confusion, I'm going to actually rename one of these two buttons. Well, this one's actually called exit program, and this one is just a big X, so I think we'll go back and rename this to just a big X. This doesn't change anything in the actual game or experience itself, it's just for my own sanity. And this is what it would look like normally if I'm an end user. Now that we've done that, we're going to save our scene, come up here, and save. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be placing a three-dimensional object in the game world so that when we scan our image target, we'll have something to display. To get back to that 3D view, we're going to click on the little 2D toggle again, and now we're back in the three-dimensional view. what I want to do is I want to focus on the image target, which is somewhere down here. Now, I could try to find it by scrolling and clicking and dragging, but I feel like that'd be very difficult to do. So instead, I'm just going to highlight it in the hierarchy, bring my cursor over to the scene window, and press the F key. And there we go. Here's my image target. Now, if I want to display something, there's a few ways that I can create a game object that'll sit in this three-dimensional world so that I have something to display. The first thing I could do is I could create an empty game object. I can do that by right-clicking in the hierarchy window or going up to the game object tab here in the top toolbar, and I can click create empty. And this just makes an empty game object. As you can see here, it's just called game object, and if we look in the inspector, all it has is a transform. There's nothing in it, it's completely invisible. It's basically just a set of positions in space. So if I did that, I could then drag something into it. I could also create a child underneath it. There's a myriad of things I can do with this. But for this example, I'm actually not going to do that. What I have here is a little asset that I pulled in a long time ago. And for the purpose of this demo, because I am putting it on YouTube, I'm not going to be using any of our 3D geometry. I'm going to be using stuff that's publicly available. So what I have here is a little mini truck. And I can see that I have two different versions here. One of them has a camera in it. One of them is a standard prefab asset. Prefabs will be covered later on. They're not important for today's purposes. So there's also two ways I can get a pre-made game object into a scene. I can either click and drag it into the scene view itself, and as you can see, it just shows up, or I can click and drag and place it in the hierarchy. So I'm going to place it in the hierarchy, and I'm going to back up a little bit. So as we can see, we now have a little truck here. The problem is, I know that when I'm looking here at my image target that's down underneath that truck, that's the actual size that I'm going for on a piece of paper. This is how big this entire truck is showing up in the game view. That means when we go to do this in real life, this will seem way too big. So what we're going to actually do is we're going to scale this truck down. Right now, it's on a scale of 1 to 1 to 1. So in Unity, 1 unit is 1 meter. So I think for the purposes of what we're trying to do here, let's bring that down to 0.1, 0.1, and 0.1. There we go. Much better. So now, when we go to scan a piece of paper, we'll see a truck that's about the size of a maybe remote control car, something more reasonable. Now, if you had an asset that was from outside of Unity that you wanted to bring in, some 3D geometry you created in Blender, or something you had imported from some other software, one of the ways you can get it in is by coming over to the Assets tab in the top toolbar, going down to Import Package, and selecting Custom Package. This will bring up a browser window where you can select any 3D geometry you'd like to bring in. Alternatively, if you had, let's say, some FBXs, or some OBJs, or another Unity-supported file type, and you wanted to import those into Unity, you could also click and simply drag them in to your whatever folder you want. And as you can see here, it shows up. As long as it's a supported file type, Unity will try its best to bring it in. So now we have a UI that's relatively well made, and we have some 3D geometry to display once we scan our image target. The next thing we're going to cover in a later session is we're actually going to write some scripts.